We've just concluded the most consequential Supreme Court term, certainly since Bush v. Gore 22 years ago, arguably since ever. The 6-3 conservative majority court handed down huge decisions just within the last week of its term, limiting the authority of the Environmental Protection Agency to regulate carbon emissions, making it harder for states to keep guns off the streets by massively expanding the reach of the Second Amendment and overturning 50 years of precedent by ending the federal constitutional right for a woman to control her own reproductive health. The court also agreed to hear a case that could give state legislatures new powers over federal elections, potentially setting up exactly the kind of power grab that Trump and his cronies were trying to pull off in 2020. This group of right-wing justices, 5 of them elevated to the Supreme Court by a president who came to office by losing the popular vote, are now in a position to fundamentally change the country. As Elie Mystal, the justice correspondent for The Nation magazine, put it yesterday, quote, "The Supreme Court as an institution defines its own power. It's now run by people who think the federal government was a mistake. And yet people in the federal government are not willing to check this institution. What do you think is going to happen?" And Elie Mystal, author of the best-selling book, Allow Me to Retort, A Black Guy's Guide to the Constitution, joins me now. Well, Elie, you take no pleasure in being right about what this court would be, but this was... Basically, this term was the nightmare scenario, the nightmare that all this felt like it was possibly leading to, the nightmare that felt like a little bit put off because they were being a little careful that first term. And there were these decisions that people thought, oh, well, maybe this was it. This was just about as bad as it could possibly be, right?
Yeah, I have this as the worst Supreme Court term since 1857. That's the court that unleashed the Dred Scott decision, which basically unleashed the Civil War. But I don't think we have to go back to 165 years ago. I think we want to go back to 30 years ago to really understand what's happened. 30 years ago, 1992, Planned Parenthood v. Casey, Roe v. Wade is upheld, albeit with new restrictions, in a 5-4 vote. Those 5 votes in the majority were justices all appointed by Republican presidents. In fact, the 1992 court was appointed by had justices, 8 of whom were appointed by Republican presidents. And yet they upheld Roe. Why? It's not like they liked abortion. It's not like they liked states' rights. They had a Confederate view of states' rights. The difference is that conservatives 30 years ago believed in practicality. They said repeatedly in Casey that the practical realities of abortion, of what the government can do and can't do, were such that they had to uphold the law just because of the facts on the ground. To defeat Roe, the modern conservatives, what the Republicans realized is that they had to start appointing judges who did not care about the practicalities, who did not care about facts, who did not care about reality itself. And that is how they found justices who are now willing to overturn Roe. And that decision, finding justices who are willing to do that, that's what explains everything else. And once you have a justice that's not willing to look at the practical realities of abortion, that's how you also have a judge who isn't willing to look at the practical realities of climate change, who isn't willing to look at the practical reality of gun violence. What we have, it's like a bad science fiction novel, Chris. It's like when they release an invasive predator to defeat some other predator. We're at the release the bat stage, right? And the problem with those science fiction novels is that once the thing finishes eating whatever you sent it to eat, it keeps feeding. And that's all these conservatives are going to do. They're going to keep feeding on the rights and dignity of others until somebody in the government, somebody in the other branches of government stops them.
Well, let's talk about that, and that's an apt metaphor. I think Rob Roberts himself is probably going to be on the table pretty soon for their delectation. I mean, you mentioned Dred Scott. We quoted from Lincoln's first inaugural, which is a fascinating text because Dred Scott, of course, which basically says that black people have no rights, that you can escape slavery and be whisked back, but not only that, but that just the Constitution was meant for white people, essentially. That is a radicalizing moment. It helps to precipitate the Civil War. It helps to precipitate the formation of the Republican Party. And one of the first things that Lincoln has to do is bring the reactionary court to heel. He expands the court. The other big example of this, of course, is the Lochner-era court, which in the New Deal is striking down legislation over and over again. FDR famously tries to expand the court. There's a huge fight over it. He loses that fight, but there's some evidence to suggest the court was intimidated by it and basically reverses their jurisprudence. What's the lesson there about what checks a court that is sort of dead set on this kind of like reactionary marauding?
The court has no money, it has no power to tax, and it has no army. The person who can stop the court is the executive of the United States, the president of the United States. But right now, and I wouldn't say that I'm angry at Biden right now. I am sad. I am sad that right now, because you know who remembers 30 years ago? Joe Biden. Joe Biden remembers the hokey past of bipartisanship, where he could reach out to conservatives who were concerned about practical governance. Those people don't exist now, but Joe Biden never got the memo. And so I'm sad that in this crucial moment, we have a president who is unwilling, who is so ossified in his past thinking that he won't stand with his people at this critical moment to take power back, not for himself, because he doesn't matter, but to take power back for the American people from these unelected, unaccountable judges.